As we enter week 7 of the COVID-19 lockdown in New York, I'm thinking about the work of Amar Kanwar. I visited him in late January in Delhi with my dear colleagues Sandini Podar and Mesa Al-Qasimi. It was just as news of the pandemic was beginning to spread. It was just as we were beginning to feel its threat on our existence at the sort of periphery of our consciousness. A certain sense of fear and withdrawal was in the air. We talked to Amar about his film, Such a Morning, which was on view and is on view at the Ishara Art Foundation in Dubai, which we later went to see. Such a Morning tells the story of a distinguished mathematics professor who decides, for reasons we don't know, to retreat from life. He moves into an abandoned train carriage in a wilderness forest, we're not quite sure where. He brings in some of his belongings, a suitcase, a knapsack, a board to sleep on. The professor begins to write. We see him scraping his pencil to write, we're not quite sure what, in the notebooks that he brought with him. And he begins to hang the windows of the train carriage with sheets of cloth. He begins to live in darkness. We watch him live in that darkness. It turns out that the professor is writing letters, first to the chancellor of his university, then to his students, then to children, and finally to all of us. He has made a discovery, a profound set of insights. Or are they hallucinations? Is it real? Is it fictional? Is it mathematical truth? Is it some universal condition? He has discovered, it turns out, 49 types of darkness while he has been in the state of withdrawal in the train carriage. When I was talking to Amar, he was realizing retrospectively that why 49? His father had recently passed away and he was studying death. And he was reminded that 49 is also the number of days in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that the departed soul travels through the tumult of what we call the bardo before reaching a final state of we're not quite sure what, 49. Alongside the story of the professor in darkness, in his train carriage, in the shadows of the wilderness, we are introduced to an elderly woman who's sitting by a window with a rifle on her lap, napping, waking up, looking out. What is she fearful of? As she sits there in her state of napping fear, her house begins to crumble around her. A band of men have come to knock her house down. She sits there still until she is left on a mound with the wildflowers growing at her feet. I think of this film now because we too are now in this forced state of withdrawal. We too are in our conditioned, constructed spaces of quietude and darkness with some imagined and real threat around us. We can ask ourselves now, as we're beginning to look at the edge of when this period of isolation might lift, how will we be different? What conditions have changed? What letters would we write to the world? The reason for stepping back is to come out, is to see, is to configure again. I was not in doubt about that. I just didn't know how to come out.